Hello viewers and welcome into episode 20 of the F1 Manager Save on the PS5 with the Mercedes team. I'm Wayne, welcome back into Wayne's World. I hope you are doing well and thank you for joining me for this episode ahead of the Mexican Grand Prix. Last time out, if you haven't gone back to watch that episode, do be sure and check it out before we get into some spoilers. But we went to the United States and it was the circuit of the Americas, and it wasn't the best result for us. We had a poor qualifying due to me misjudging the rain. Once again, that's a consistent theme during this season if you've watched along with this series, but we managed to recover a little bit well, with George Russell finishing in P5 and Lewis Hamilton finishing in P4. Apologies once again for the lack of content over last week. I do have a bit of a cold still, so you might hear that in my voice, so I apologize if the quality isn't as good, but I do want to make sure we bring you the end of this season, because at the top of the constructors standards, Mercedes are sitting in second place. That P4 and P5 was good, but when you consider that Ferrari came home in P1 with Carlos Sainz, P3 with Charles Leclerc, it wasn't the best result possible. And things are going to get worse this weekend, because I think we're going to have to take a huge engine penalty and start from the back of the grid with Lewis Hamilton, so that he has the best opportunity to win in Brazil and in Abu Dhabi. As we move over to the driver standings, Lewis Hamilton does still lead from Charles Leclerc by 5 points, but as expected, we are going to have to take a massive engine penalty, and I think it's best to do it here at Mexico, where you need a lot of power and have fresh components for the Brazil and Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And hopefully, you never know, Charles Leclerc might need to do the same thing. George Russell currently comfortably in P5. He's cleared Sergio Perez. The big winner from last time out in America was Carlos Sainz. He overtook Max Verstappen in the driver's standings, moved up to P3 with his impressive victory in America. Now, before moving forward to the race, first thing that we want to do, we've got some development points, or a development point for George Russell, and we are going to put that on the defending once again. So we're going to up that. He's still only 86 rated though, so I don't know what it's going to take for us to get him up to 87, but that is that done. Lewis Hamilton doesn't have another one. Nick De Vries doesn't have another one either, so that is all okay. Right, before we head on to the emails, let's just show you the cars that we were talking about. So if you have a look here, the engine, all three of them are worn for Lewis Hamilton pretty badly. The ERS as well, both of them are pretty badly worn for Lewis Hamilton. The gearbox is close to being worn as well. So I do think what we're going to do with Lewis is we're just going to bite the bullet, and we are going to take the full engine penalties and change everything, give him fresh everything. He'll start from the back of the grid, and I reckon we'll still have the speed to finish in around about P4, P5 with our strategy. But there has been a new patch released. Let me know in the comments down below if you have noticed a big difference with the patch. Apparently there's been a lot of changes, especially with tire wear. This is our first game that I've played on the patch, post-patch on the PS5, so it'll be interesting to see if I notice any different. But let me know in the comment section down below if you have noticed anything yourself. George Russell's car, he is fine. He took a new engine last time out, so that will stay until the end. His ERS will stay until the end as well. The gearbox though, he might need a bit of a change, so we might save that and use his gearbox, a worn gearbox through practice, and give him that one back for the race in Mexico. Email wise, everything is in poor condition with Lewis Hamilton. We already know that, and we're coming to the end of the period for testing this time out. We can't really do much, so what I'm going to do is hang on to our resources. We can't carry them over for next year, for the next period, sorry. So we're going to focus on the underfloor next time out, and the race simulator refurbishment has been completed. That was doing quite poorly. Right, race preview of the Mexican Grand Prix then. Yeah, we have to be careful because Ferrari are on fire at the minute. As we move on to the race preparation here, performance targets as usual: reach Q2, reach Q3, qualifying position, 2 drivers in the top 8, we'll confirm that. Finish position will be top 6, that's fine. We could do that at least with George Russell. A finished position streak, 2 drivers in the top 8 for the final 3. So let's confirm that. And that is everything good to go. If we look in the inbox once again, I don't think we've got anything else really. We're going to mark everything as red. There's nothing else that we need to consider. That was a quick little bit of an intro. Let's head into Mexico.
Music is in the air this weekend, but it's not mariachi we'll be hearing. It's going to be the roar of the engines and the cheers of the crowd. Formula One is back in the very heart of Mexico City at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. This is an exhilarating circuit on the Formula One calendar. We'll be sure to see plenty of battles and overtaking this weekend, especially with the help of not 1, not 2, but 3 DRS zones. With the season nearly concluded, time is running out for the teams. Can anyone make a last-minute breakthrough? Can the leading drivers hold on? Only time will tell. The weekend begins here.
Right, here we are then at Mexico. Clear skies all throughout, so no chance of rain messing us up once again this season. If we continue on, right, so George Russell car parts, we're going to try and save both the engine. Well, the engine doesn't really need saving, but we're going to save it anyway. We're going to install a used engine there. We're going to install used ERS there. It's just for practice. We're not going to worry too much about it in the race, and they're going to install a used gearbox as well, and we'll keep everything for usage in the race with George Russell. Run plan, we will go to 20 laps. Out tires can go 35 laps around here, so the soft tire is actually a good tire to have this time out. And we'll do the car setup in a minute. Car parts for Lewis Hamilton, we are going to have to take penalties where we can, so we're just going to keep everything as is. The gearbox, Hamilton, so hopefully we won't pay too much attention to the timing sheets, because I'm not expecting us to be that fast around here with these used car parts. But once we put everything back into the car and all the new parts for Lewis Hamilton, a little bit of a recovery job will have to be done. Right, I'm going to work on the setup, and as usual, any highlights during the practice sessions, I will bring them to you as they come. Right, so we are here at the start of practice for Mexico, and we're going to go out on soft tires. We've put used components on both George Russell's car and Lewis Hamilton's car as well, so let's send them out. They've still not patched that. I've sent out George Russell, but it's showing Lewis Hamilton's car, so I do hope that that's something that they change in the future. Oh, I've just realized that we should have an upgrade part to add onto George Russell's car. So we'll need to do that as well. Let's fast forward on, and then Lewis Hamilton goes out as well. We've done a little bit of a setup with both of the drivers, as there's a yellow flag already. What's happened there? Ricciardo spun on his outlap. He's just come out of the pits, and he's already spun at turn 1, so that is a good sign for the McLaren boys. Yeah, so no highlights to show so far apart from that spin, as both of our drivers start their first couple of flying laps. So there's been a huge crash in practice already. Charles Leclerc is behind Williams. Oh, he contact with Max Verstappen. I don't know who's to blame there, but that is a massive crash. There's going to be a penalty. So who's that going to be for? How do I find that out? I can. Max Verstappen's going to have a penalty. Sergio Perez is taking an engine penalty, I think, unless he's to blame for the crash. Valtteri Bottas has a penalty. Kevin Magnussen has a penalty. Yuki Tsunoda has a penalty. Alonso, Gasly. Leclerc's taking a penalty. Oh, Leclerc is taking a penalty this race. Okay, we're going to have to take a penalty with Lewis Hamilton then to match him for the driver's standings. And we're going to let George Russell take the lead of proceedings this weekend. So that is big news. Big news, as George Russell has a very bad setup. So I'll work on that, but that's huge news to know that Charles Leclerc is taking a penalty. We're going to take a penalty with Lewis Hamilton as well, so hopefully they'll both be at the back of the grid. Right then, so coming towards the end of practice 1, and George Russell, his setup has not gone very well so far during this session, so we're going to have to work around a little bit with that. ahead of the next session, whereas Lewis Hamilton's is actually pretty okay. He was on around about 60% last time we brought him in. He's going to stay out till the end of the session. We're just going to conserve some tires, conserve some fuel as well, and we'll bring him in at the end of the session as he completely slowed down front of the Alpine. Lewis Hamilton is in P6, George Russell is in P11, but again, time-wise, this session is not the biggest deal because we have old car components, and pretty much everyone in this race, apart from Carlos Sainz and George Russell, have taken engine penalties. Let's take a look at George Russell's setup. 30% on the setup. We have a lot of work to do there, but we'll do it ahead of practice 2. We won't need to worry about that. And Lewis Hamilton is just going to stay out until the end of the session. We'll bring him in. 20% on the track acclimatization is pretty good. Does he get out of the way of the Alpine? Yes, he does. And yeah, a decent practice session so far. And I reckon we've got a lot of time to spare when we add the car components that we need to add. George Russell at the start of practice 2 is having a bit of an accident. Oh, he's badly hit the wall there. Is he out of the session? That was a major impact as the Aston Martin then goes straight through the debris. Yeah, they're not going to be happy with that in the garage. Let's take a look. George Russell's retired from the session. That is a massive impact. So it's all going to be down to Lewis Hamilton now in terms of setup. George Russell at the wrong time of the season has really taken a bit of a nosedive, and now he's going to have to take a replacement gearbox. Right, we're taking a full engine penalty with Lewis and with George Russell. Ferrari aren't taking any engine penalties so far with Carlos Sainz, although he has just spun at turn 15, very slow part of the circuit, and he's just lost the back end. That's a poor spin from him. It's advantage Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship as we fast forward things just a little bit to get out of this safety car virtual safety car period. Lewis Hamilton's going to stay out a little bit longer, currently down P13 on the medium tires, doing a decent long stretch. But yeah, the constructors title here could be out of reach if Carlos Sainz does win and our guys can't get onto the podium with the engine penalties that we'll be taking. Both of our boys are likely to start from the back of the grid, although there will be other engine penalties as well across the grid. But George Russell, he was the one hope this week because he has fresher stuff than Lewis Hamilton does. He's setup wise with Lewis Hamilton, things are looking okay. 2 optimals, 2 greats, and a bad on the oversteer. So the oversteer is front wing related, so we want it to go sort of more that direction, but we do need these to go back down a little bit. That's optimal there, that's optimal there, something like that. The straights are great, which is fine. We are going to have to work just a little bit with some of the other stuff potentially here. Something like that maybe. We'll go back out on the medium tires with Lewis Hamilton down in 13th. His track acclimatization at 34% is not the best, so we do need to get that up a little bit. We can't really do much with George Russell's car now that he's retired, so he's just going to be a sitting duck for the remaining half an hour of this session. Right, the end of Q2 then, and the 2 Red Bulls are leading the way in practice. Sorry, not Q2, practice 2. Apologies for that. Max Verstappen, top of the timesheet. Sergio Perez at his home race in P2. Carlos Sainz looking strong again. He's in P3. Charles Leclerc in the garage at P4. On our side, Lewis Hamilton down in P14. George Russell in P15. He's going to have a lot of work done ahead of Saturday to his car. Setup wise for Lewis Hamilton, we're currently at 85%, which is the highest we've got so far. Track acclimatization at 57%. So he's going to do a long run on the hards, basically for the whole session. Try and get that track acclimatization up. And we want to get some more confidence in the setup as well. If we can get up into the high 90s or something, that'll be a bit of a positive. So if we just confirm that, go towards the end of the session, we'll move towards practice 3. And yeah, hopefully George Russell can make up for lost time. Right, so practice-wise, George Russell is back out there, and we've managed to get his setup to at 87%. I don't really know if we're going to be able to do much better than that, just because we lost a hell of a lot of time in practice 2, but we will mess around with that. Lewis Hamilton on the other side is doing his long runs to get his track acclimatization up towards 100%. But 3 greats are good on the optimal on the straights. That's fantastic. So the rear wing doesn't really need to move. It's just some more of the other stuff. And there we have it, a 97% with Lewis Hamilton. I think that should be okay. We're going to send him back out on the same hard tires just to get that final 5%. We'll reduce that down to 15 laps because that should be in, or we'll do 20 laps just to be sure that that's okay. For the final 5% on the track acclimatization, we'll send him out and he is good to go. There is another crash. Is this going to involve George Russell? Please don't involve George Russell again, because we're not going to call him in. We're going to ignore that. Who's crashed? Who has crashed? Oh, it's a Williams, Latifi, and an Alpha Tauri. Is that Pierre Gasly? Oh no, that's Tsunoda. That's a huge accident as well. Stupid from Tsunoda there, I think. Yeah, it was Yuki Tsunoda. He's out. George Russell then coming into the pits to end his practice session down in P13. Lewis Hamilton down in P19. Again, those aren't representative times though. We've got old parts and just been getting a load of information on the setups. Let's take a look here. George Russell as well, 97%, 4 optimals and a great. Good for him. But his track acclimatization is only at 74, and I don't think we're going to be able to get much more use out of that. Lewis Hamilton can come into the pits at the end of this lap. 100% on the track acclimatization, 97% on the car setup. Almost a perfect session for him. And then yeah, we're gonna look to add on all of the new stuff that we need to for the car. Obviously Lewis Hamilton has to get a new gearbox, new ERS, new engine as well. George Russell, he's got a new engine, so he's fine for that till the end of the season, but he needs a new gearbox. I think the ERS should be fine as well. So yeah, he's going to take a gearbox penalty. Lewis Hamilton's going to get a brand new everything. Right, here we are then ahead of qualifying, and Lewis Hamilton's going to take a new engine, which is going to cost $1 million, which is not the best. All that on Lewis Hamilton's car, a new ERS, which is going to cost $1 million as well. These are really digging into our cost cap, so I need to check the money at the end of this session, and the new gearbox as well. But all 3 of these should now last for the remainder of the season, the final 3 races. For Lewis there, in terms of George Russell's car parts, engine wise, his engine should be fine, 96% wear. It's basically brand new. His ERS is 73%. We might need to take a new ERS, but his gearbox is what we do need, and we're going to give him a new gearbox and we'll install that one. Both of those weren't his fault. Oh, that one definitely was. Sorry, the first one was not his fault. So yeah, there we go. And then in terms of the side pods, both the cars have the new version of the side pods, which is quite a bit better in terms of performance, so that's good there. Underfloor, both got the new version of that. Suspension, all good. Rear wing, all good. Front wing, good. And chassis, why does Lewis Hamilton still have the old what on earth has happened there? All right, I'm gonna need to look into that, because I thought everyone had the same thing. Bit confusing there, but obviously to qualify in here in Mexico, hopefully we can get a good good qualifying position.
We're just watching the Red Bull.
Oh, there's a big crash in qualifying as Max Verstappen goes side. Why are you racing? There was a Mercedes there. Look at the front wing of that Alpha Tauri. I think that's ruined everyone's session. We should be fine. Lewis Hamilton in P5, George Russell in P6. We're just going to bring them in because there was a massive yellow flag and George Russell is not going to improve. Yeah, we're gonna call him in. That was a massive crash in qualifying, not something I've seen before. Lewis Hamilton, he's now been caught up in that traffic, so we're gonna call him in as well. So I think we should be okay with George Russell in P4. He's got a little bit of traffic in front of him though, so we do need to be careful there. Lewis Hamilton though, he does need to set a quicker time. He's currently in P7, and with Leclerc in the bottom 5 as Mick Schumacher's locked up, and there's going to be a yellow flag, so we're going to have to slow down. We could be knocked out here if there are faster lap times with Lewis Hamilton, and again, it doesn't really matter too much considering we're going to have some engine penalties, but yeah, in an ideal world we improve here and we're through to Q3. So Lewis Hamilton on his final fast lap is coming up to the back of, what car is that? Oh, that's going to be the Haas that locked up, isn't it? That's going to be Mick Schumacher. Don't get in the way, please. Please do not get in the way. We're on a better lap so far. We've gone green at sector 1. As George Russell's gone green sector 1 as well. He's in traffic behind the Alfa Romeo. I think of Zhou Guanyu, is it? Let's take a look. Yeah, Zhou Guanyu. As Lewis Hamilton has now come right to the back of the Haas here of Mick Schumacher. He could get a little bit of a slipstream maybe. I'm not sure. But hopefully we could improve the time and improve on P7. Fernando Alonso is qualified behind us in P8, and Lewis Hamilton goes up to P3, down to P4 once Sergio Perez finishes his time. But George Russell comes around the final corner, crosses the line, and he sets a decent time. It's P4 and P5 for both of them. No, P5 and P6 as Charles Leclerc goes quicker than both of us as well. Looking at all of the grid penalties from Q2, it's looking as though Carlos Sainz is going to be on pole. George Russell could be, well, he doesn't have a penalty so far, it says, but we did take a new gearbox, so he should do. But looking at the penalty system, Sainz 1, Russell 2, Norris 3, but it should be Sainz 1, Norris 2, Zhou Guanyu 3. That would be a major surprise in terms of the qualifying grid. Let's go on to used tires with both of our drivers for the first runs in Q3, end of Q3 then, and we are coming towards the final turn with George Russell, who could be on a provisional pole position if that gearbox penalty doesn't go through. It's between him and Carlos Sainz, and George Russell crosses the line and is up to provisional P4. But remember, there are so many grid penalties to come. Max Verstappen has the fastest time. Lewis Hamilton goes above George Russell, but it doesn't matter because we will be taking a huge engine penalty with Lewis Hamilton. But it's all about Carlos Sainz now. He's going to be on pole regardless, so he's been caught up in a bit of traffic here behind that Alpine. It looks as though he's going to have pole position by default, really, as everyone else has major grid penalties, and potentially George Russell could be starting here on P2, but that still remains to be seen. I don't think Carlos Sainz is going any faster. Let's speed things up here. Carlos Sainz, did he abort his lap because he's not crossed the line? What happened to Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc? What happened to both of these guys? I'm very confused what happened there, but yeah, it's the end of qualifying. They seem to have abort their lap, and Carlos Sainz, if we're looking at this engine situation, I wish that maybe I'm missing it. Is there a way of checking to see what the penalties are? I wish there was. It would be nice to see what the penalties are, but if my understanding is correct, looking here, Carlos Sainz is on pole, George Russell's on P2, Lando Norris is on P3, Zhou Guanyu is P4, Albon potentially P5, and Esteban Ocon potentially P6, but it depends on what level of penalties everyone has. Max Verstappen, because his was collision, he might only get deducted 3 places. But yeah, this is going to be the most mismatched grid that we've ever seen in Formula 1 history, I reckon. But let's head to the Mexican Grand Prix. And if George Russell's in P2, then that's fantastic for the Constructors' Championship.
The time has come to fight it out. It's race day.
We saw a reasonable push from Mercedes in qualifying, and they'll have plenty of opportunities here to achieve a great result. We saw a reasonably good qualifying performance from Ferrari, and they certainly have a good chance to capitalize during the race. And the sun is shining bright here today. This is perfect weather for teams and drivers alike to show us what they're capable of.
Well, there's some serious decision making ahead for teams and the drivers as we begin the Mexican Grand Prix.
Right, so looking at things then, we seem to have got away with it with George Russell. Yeah, we gave him a new gearbox and he wasn't given a penalty for it. He starts in P2. So his aim is to beat Carlos Sainz. He needs to beat Carlos Sainz in order to give us the best opportunity in the Constructors' Championship. Lewis Hamilton starts in P16. We're going to see the rest of the grid in a second, but strategy-wise, let's take a look at what is potentially best. So I think with George Russell, we are going to do something like this. We're going to start on the mediums, go on to the hards, and end on the softs. And we're going to do something like that, I believe, with him. Yeah, I think that is probably the best strategy for George. Strategy option B. And we can go a little bit aggressive on the tyres all throughout the race. We won't attack too much unless we have an opportunity to do it. If we get out in clear air with George Russell, then yeah, we will be able to save tyres just a little bit. He has a brilliant opportunity here to win the race. Now, as for Lewis Hamilton, his strategy is going to be a little bit different, starting at the back of the grid. I think we're going to one stop with him. I think with Lewis Hamilton, we're going to do something like this. Start on the mediums, go aggressive at the start, and then we are going to one stop onto hards and just go all the way. And then if they last, if there's maybe a safety car or something, be able to push towards the end of the race with Lewis Hamilton. We can always adjust it on the fly here. If George Russell's strategy, he's due to pit in around lap 24. So Lewis Hamilton could come in lap 25 potentially if the strategy allows. So we will go medium onto hard, something like that, and we will do that for now. But we'll look around at lap 25 and we'll see if we can get ahead of Charles Leclerc. We'll look to maybe cover him off because we're thinking title wise now. If George Russell can beat Sainz, that's brilliant for the constructors, and we need Lewis Hamilton to stay ahead of Charles Leclerc for the drivers. Let's jump into the race now and see how just jumbled up this grid is.
Away we go.
Right, first things first, George Russell goes straight onto aggressive. Lewis Hamilton is down in P16. Where is Charles Leclerc? He's in P7. So that is a huge problem for us. Right, before we get into the race, let's pause it. Let's see how things are set up. So Lando Norris was P3. Perez and Verstappen were P4 and 5. So they didn't have massive grid penalties. And Charles Leclerc was P7 following his penalty. Albon 8. Bottas 9, Ocon in 10th. So it wasn't as jumbled up as I thought it would be, but George Russell still does have a very good opportunity here for a race win. Let's continue on as George Russell down the inside at turn 1. He's lost out. He's down to P4. That's so disappointing. Can Lewis Hamilton make up a position? No, he's down to P17. He needs to stick around the outside of the Haas. Let's look at the tyre situation. Everyone has pretty much started on mediums, apart from a few of the midfield cars. But George Russell, we did not need that. We needed him to get a decent jump on the guys in front. And he's now behind Lando Norris in P4. Not a good start from him at all. Can Lewis Hamilton make his way through this midfield quickly? He's still fighting with Kevin Magnussen, though. This isn't the best start from the Mercedes team here.
Russell.
Right, George Russell then down the inside of Lando Norris at turn 1. Sticks it around the outside of turn 2 into turn 3. And he is up into P3. So, good move from George Russell, getting him back up the grid from celebrations in the garage there. We now need to push onto the back of Sergio Perez and keeping the DRS. Lewis Hamilton is still down in P16, being held up pretty badly here. We need to get by Nicholas Latifi as soon as possible. So let's hit overtake mode on the ERS and try to get by this Williams who is holding us up. Right, Lewis Hamilton taking a look down the inside of Mick Schumacher. He needs to make this move now for P14 because Charles Leclerc is now up into P6. We need to start making a little bit of a move here with Lewis Hamilton. And he is past Mick Schumacher. Can he stay there? Yes, he can. Let's drop the DRS back down to neutral. And can we get around the outside of the AlphaTauri as well? There's Pierre Gasly potentially, as there's a yellow flag in sector 1. What's happened there? Oh, it's a safety car. Okay, there's a safety car. Right, who's crashed? Let's conserve the tyres here. That could be big for Lewis Hamilton. Who has crashed? People in front of him. So let's conserve. We're not going to bring anyone in just yet.
There's contact.
Who crashed? Let's take a look.
We can take a look now.
It's an Alpine
Daniel Ricciardo involved.
and Daniel Ricciardo and the Williams as well. So Ricciardo locks up. Oh my goodness. That's the two Hasses. That nearly involved Lewis Hamilton there. Mick Schumacher and Daniel Ricciardo are both out. So Lewis Hamilton, let's conserve some tyres, conserve some fuel. Let's also harvest the battery. And same for George Russell. Conserve some fuel, harvest the battery. Actually, no, we'll keep it on neutral with him. And yeah, Lewis Hamilton gets 2 free spots then, I believe. Oh no, he doesn't, because it was behind. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo, massive crash there, locking up and smashing into Mick Schumacher. Right, safety car coming in. George Russell going up to aggressive, and on push. We're going to deploy some ERS as well off the start. So Lewis Hamilton has a big opportunity here to maybe get a few positions, and he needs to get by at least this AlphaTauri soon, as George Russell is going to look at the inside of Carlos Sainz. Sergio Perez leads this race all of a sudden. I don't know how or when that happened, but he's overtaken Carlos Sainz. That's good for us in terms of the Constructors' Championship. If George Russell can finish above Carlos Sainz, that's brilliant stuff. But we're going to go back down to neutral because we weren't able to get that done, and neutral with Lewis Hamilton as well. Lewis Hamilton needs to get into the points very, very soon. But the longer he stays in this traffic, it's just ruining his race chances here as he looks around the outside of Pierre Gasly. Can he get this move done? Just be brave, Lewis. Stick it around the outside and get up to P13. And then you're onto the back of the Aston Martins. Can we stay ahead of Pierre Gasly? Yes, we can. And that's 1 position following that safety car period. But Pierre Gasly still stays there. And they're racing side by side. It's brilliant racing here. And Lewis Hamilton is going to have to give up this position. It's brilliant driving from Pierre Gasly. Is he going to go down the inside again? It's brilliant driving from Lewis Hamilton. Who's going to take the position? Lewis Hamilton, I think, just about stays in front. And he's now past Pierre Gasly, and he's looking to get beyond Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel out in front. George Russell, he's still on the back of the Ferrari. We need him to overtake Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton certainly can't win the Drivers' Trophy today for the Drivers' Championship, but he can definitely lose it if he has a poor race and Charles Leclerc can jump ahead of people up in 6th place. And Lewis Hamilton is now past Lance Stroll and onto the back of Sebastian Vettel. If we can clear this traffic, get by Vettel, get by Albon, and try to cruise up to the back of Valtteri Bottas, we could be on for a decent amount of points as Lewis Hamilton dives down the inside of Sebastian Vettel. It's a brilliant move, but Sebastian Vettel's not giving up the position lightly. He is not in any contention for race wins or race points really this year, but this is his excitement for the season. Doing well, racing wheel to wheel with Lewis Hamilton. But Lewis Hamilton's now up to P11, and now next on the road is Alexander Albon. If we can get him as soon as possible, that would be fantastic. All of a sudden, George Russell is fighting for the race lead here with Sergio Perez. As something happened to Carlos Sainz, he's now down to P4. Don't know whether there was some contact between Sainz and Perez, but George Russell's up into P2 with Max Verstappen just behind. You can see the Red Bull of Sergio Perez leads, and here comes Max Verstappen with the DRS. I don't know what happened here, but George Russell's now back down to P3 as Lewis Hamilton is up into P9. He is on the charge. The Ferrari of Charles Leclerc is really slow at the minute. Max Verstappen has overtaken George Russell as well. So George Russell must have been in the lead heading into the detection point of the DRS. And now Red Bull have turned their race around and it is a 1-2. And Sergio Perez is leading at his home Grand Prix. George Russell is struggling a little bit. So we're going to go back onto push with the fuel. And we're going to drop it down to standard on the tyres. We're not going to push the tyres as much because our tyre wear is nowhere near as good as a lot of the field. Lewis Hamilton, he's going to have to keep pushing. But we are kind of over here, as Lewis Hamilton's now up to P8. Let's take a look at this replay. He is driving splendid at the minute. He's up into P8. What a drive this is from Lewis Hamilton, getting by Joe Granu with the DRS. And you can see Charles Leclerc is just up ahead. He has been fighting with Lando Norris this whole race so far. Lando Norris is there. Charles Leclerc has been battling with Lando, and he has not been able to make up any distance to the front four whatsoever. As George Russell is fighting with Carlos Sainz now. He's back down to P4. We're gonna need to stay on aggressive. Here goes Lewis Hamilton with the DRS open. It should be an easy overtake. He is up into P6 and past Lando Norris. A brilliant move there, as Lewis Hamilton is overtaking Charles Leclerc. Where did this come from? Where has this speed in the Mercedes come from? Are we going to get him down the start-finish straight? Potentially. Right, we're going to go back down to aggressive because the tyres are overheating with George Russell. But this is an important move here for the World Drivers' Championship. Lewis Hamilton is side by side with Charles Leclerc, and we are up into P5 with Lewis Hamilton ahead of championship contender Charles Leclerc. This has been a sensational drive from Lewis, and now points wise this is the perfect scenario for Mercedes. Right, Carlos Sainz has boxed in for his set of hard tyres. So what we're going to do with George Russell is we're going to box in as well. We are not going to mess around here. What is the strategy here for George Russell? It's to go on to hard. So we're going to match Carlos Sainz here, and we're going to go on to hard tyres the lap after. Let's push it to the limit here with George Russell. Now there's a bit of clean air. Lewis Hamilton is still fighting with Charles Leclerc. He's managed to overtake. He's been overtaken, sorry, by the Ferrari man. It'll be interesting to see here if Charles Leclerc does box in after Carlos Sainz. It's under DRS. It's a fantastic move round the outside of turn 1. And it's an easy overtake to stick for Charles Leclerc, who then got DRS again into the second detection point. Our aim is for Lewis to beat Charles and for George to beat Carlos Sainz. That seems to be maybe a bit of an issue for Charles Leclerc. His DRS is stuck open. Right, George Russell, pit stop time. In you come for hard tyres. Can you get out ahead of Carlos Sainz comfortably? Smooth pit stop needed. Here we go. It's a 2.5 second. Good stuff there. Lewis Hamilton, he overtakes George Russell on the road due to that pit stop. And is he going to overtake Charles Leclerc in the meantime as well? Let's take a look. No, he's not able to do it. George Russell is coming out of the pits. There is Carlos Sainz, and George Russell is out ahead. Well done, George. Let's go on to standard just to ease the tyres in just a little bit. Right, so on lap 25, Charles Leclerc has come into the pits for hard tyres. He was behind Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton has got a few laps of life left in these mediums, and with clean air I think we're okay to keep pushing. So we're going to deploy some ERS, and we're going to push for 1 lap, if not 2, as George Russell's been overtaken now by Carlos Sainz. That is not the best news, but it's okay. As long as we stay in DRS range, I think we're fine. Right, here comes Lewis Hamilton for his one and only scheduled stop. Is it a smooth one? Yes, it is. 2.5 seconds on the clock for the hard tyres. Where is Charles Leclerc? That is going to be the main thing. We were ahead of him on the racetrack before the set of pit stops. Can we stay ahead of him now as Lewis Hamilton comes out of the pits? There you can see Charles Leclerc. We are comfortably ahead of the Ferrari driver, which again is big news for the Drivers' Championship, as George Russell is now caught in a fight with the Alfa Romeos alongside Carlos Sainz. The Alfa Romeos are yet to make their pits. They're going very, very long here, as I think the Red Bulls are looking to 1 stop as well. Potentially us with George Russell, and the Ferraris are 2 stopping. The Red Bulls are 1 stopping. And George Russell is right on the back of Carlos Sainz. That is good. Lewis Hamilton now needs to break DRS of Charles Leclerc as quickly as possible. But we also have to remember that we are going to the end of this race on this set of tyres.
Hamilton involved in this one.
No. Lewis Hamilton spun.
That's where they spin out.
What's happened there? What? He was not even pushing. He's not even pushing. Luckily, we've not lost too much time. We're in P6 still. But oh my goodness, we've only lost the one position to Charles Leclerc. Oh, what has happened there? Lewis Hamilton wasn't even pushing, and Charles Leclerc gets the easiest position because Lewis Hamilton's facing the wrong way. Absolute craziness there. He's not even pushing. I don't understand how he spun that. That's a poor mistake by Lewis Hamilton. The tyres should still be okay until the end of the race. George Russell has quite a bit of tyre life left, so we're going to wait until the end of this stint maybe to go on to attack. But Lewis Hamilton, at a time where we didn't need a mistake, he's made a bad one. Right, lap 44, and Lewis Hamilton has worked his way back into DRS range using his ERS and some of his fuel as well. Tyre wise, we seem to be okay. We might need to conserve a little bit towards the end. George Russell has been dropped a bit by the Red Bull, so we're going to now go to an aggressive with the tyres because Carlos Sainz is closing the gap as well. Lewis Hamilton, a brilliant recovery drive. Again, I don't think we're fighting for the race win here with Lewis at all, unless this one-stop strategy is something amazing. But we need to get past Charles Leclerc on the road. George Russell, we need him to stay ahead of Carlos Sainz. And again, if maybe he can get some DRS from the Red Bulls up in front, that would be great. Let's take a look at the tyre wear of everyone. George Russell's on 70%. Lewis Hamilton's on 75%. The tyres are overheating, so let's just keep it on standard for now with George Russell, because we need to keep him out of DRS range of Carlos Sainz. And the recovery is somewhat complete as Lewis Hamilton retakes a position from Charles Leclerc following that spin. He's recovered from that mistake very, very well, and he is now back up into P5 is Lewis Hamilton, ahead of title contender Charles Leclerc, and we're now into tyre conservation mode here with Lewis Hamilton. If we can maybe get out of DRS range of Charles Leclerc, that will be fantastic, because out in P3, George Russell is going to make this two-stop strategy potentially work here. We are going to push now pretty much until the end of this stint. We're 2 seconds ahead of Carlos Sainz, so we're now going to just try and save the tyres a little bit more, because the longer we can last on these hard tyres, you never know, maybe the Red Bulls are actually going to two-stop, and these hard tyres could go all the way with George Russell. Right, big news, Charles Leclerc is not one-stopping. He is boxing in for medium tyres to end this race. There are 18 laps left, and Charles Leclerc has come into the pits for his second pit stop, as has Carlos Sainz. He's boxed in for medium tyres as well. Right, George Russell, we are going on to softs, I think. Softs can go 35 laps. Why would they not box onto softs? We've got a fresh set of softs. Box. So George Russell, you can now attack for the end of this lap. What do we do with Lewis Hamilton? I think we match Charles Leclerc and we box with Lewis Hamilton as well. He was meant to one stop. I don't think that's going to work. We've got a fresh set of soft tyres, so I think we've got enough time to get George Russell in and out, and Lewis Hamilton's going to go onto the softs, and the softs have worked well. They worked well for us in practice, but we're going to see just how well they can work here. Let's push on the fuel as well with both of our drivers. Actually, no, we're near the end of George Russell's lap. So here we go, and Lewis Hamilton is going to hopefully produce a bit of an overcut here with Charles Leclerc, who boxed in for the medium tyres. Right, let's get this stop easily done with George Russell. Soft tyres go on. That is perfectly fine. Here is Lewis Hamilton. The pit stop crew are waiting for him, waiting for the soft tyres as well. In and out pretty comfortably. Right, George Russell, he is down to P4. He's way behind Carlos Sainz. Where did we lose that much time from? George Russell is way behind Carlos Sainz, who's absolutely flying. Right, okay, that is not good at all. Where is Lewis Hamilton. There is Charles Leclerc. Okay, so the race is now on. In a potential pivotal move for the Drivers' Championship this season, Lewis Hamilton has overtaken Charles Leclerc. We're on the soft tyres, they're on the mediums, so we need to create a gap now. We need to push as hard as we can because the soft tyres are going to drop off a cliff probably a lot quicker than the mediums are. They'll be able to push towards the end of this race. We're going to have to push now and take the life out of the tyres as early as we can. Let's take a look here. Carlos Sainz has already wasted a lot of his tyre life pushing. George Russell is 4 seconds behind now. So he is slowly but surely closing the gap. And as long as we are in tyre life, George Russell seems okay. And he set the fastest lap of the race. So he is pushing and he's pushing well. Out in front, Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen have been untouchable. This Red Bull has been fantastic as Lewis Hamilton takes the fastest lap away from his teammate. We need to get out of DRS and we need to make sure that Charles Leclerc doesn't start pushing at the wrong time here at the end of this race. Currently Mercedes P4 and P5, but for the Drivers' Championship, that's all we need. But we do need George Russell to catch up and pass Carlos Sainz. Of George Russell in the DRS zone, overtaking Carlos Sainz in what is massive for us points wise in the Constructors' Championship. Remember, Ferrari are ahead of us at the minute. We need to close them down bit by bit, and George Russell's helping us do that. We need to run away from Carlos Sainz now, who has been very, very good this whole race. Out in front, the Red Bulls comfortable. Max Verstappen way ahead of his teammate. It seems as though it's going to be an easy 1-2 here for the Red Bulls, but the race is behind here, and it's the race for P3. Can George Russell stay ahead of Carlos Sainz? And George Russell now has to stay ahead of Carlos Sainz as Max Verstappen has won the Mexican Grand Prix. Sergio Perez is going to come home in second. Please, Alfa Romeo, stay in front of Carlos Sainz. No, he's got through. It's going to be DRS. We're going to run out of battery. I don't care about Max Verstappen winning. Congratulations to him. He's out of the title race. He's meaningless. George Russell for the Constructors, please. Yes, we come home in P3 ahead of Carlos Sainz, and drivers standings wise, Lewis Hamilton with all of the new engine components starting from the back of the grid, and he is finished ahead of championship rival Charles Leclerc in P6. Absolutely brilliant scenes here as I've pressed the wrong button.
And here today, George Russell making British motorsport proud. Everyone involved in Formula One dreams of seeing their driver up there on the podium. And right now, it's the British driver who proudly takes his place on the podium. A lovely occasion as we see all three drivers clearly relishing their moments on the podium. Mercedes once again showing why they're one of the biggest names in F1.
The whole team was absolutely on their game today, and the result proves that.
At the end of the weekend, it's second place in the constructor standings for them.
Coming up in the next round is the Sao Paulo Grand Prix as we head to Brazil. Join us next time at Interlagos.
That brings us to the end of a brilliant, really entertaining Mexican Grand Prix. One of the more intriguing ones this season. I definitely enjoyed that. F1 Manager really does bring some fantastic races. I do enjoy this game. I hope you are still enjoying it as well, and I hope you're enjoying the series. But just to cover things again, Max Verstappen coming home in P1 with Sergio Perez in P2 at his home race, a Red Bull 1-2. Considering they've been so off the boil recently, a really good result for them. George Russell started in P2, got away with a bit of a gearbox penalty. I think he should have definitely taken one, but he came home in P3 despite starting on P2. Carlos Sainz with a disappointing race by his standards, coming home in P4 considering he's been in good form. Lewis Hamilton in P5, Charles Leclerc in P6, which has very, very big permutations for the drivers' stand-ins. And looking at them now, Lewis Hamilton opens up the gap by 3 more points. He's now sitting 8 points ahead of Charles Leclerc, which is basically a race win, second place, something like that, especially with that fastest lap of the race. Brilliant stuff by Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen goes back above Carlos Sainz into P3. George Russell comfortably in P5 ahead of Sergio Perez, which is a really good season for him. Looking down into the mid-table, good battle there between Valtteri Bottas and Fernando Alonso. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top there. Esteban Ocon in P9 beating Pierre Gasly, potential future Alpine teammate. Lando Norris will be very disappointed with his 19 points this season. Daniel Ricciardo more so with his 5 points this season. Constructors wise, Ferrari have the gap closed by Mercedes. Now it is only a 20-point lead, but Ferrari lead from Mercedes ahead of Red Bull. Alpine comfortably in 4th, Alfa Romeo in 5th, Alfa Romeo in 5th, AlphaTauri 6th, McLaren in 7th, Haas, Aston Martin and Williams the last team to score a point. But that's going to bring us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much once again for watching, all of the support on the series as well. Do genuinely appreciate it. We will be back for the Brazilian Grand Prix as sponsorship wise. We've brought in a load of money and outgoing was just George Russell receiving some podium bonus, but we'll be back for the Brazilian Grand Prix. If you are enjoying the series, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here for regular Formula One Manager content. I am Wayne. Thanks for watching and do take care. I'll see you for the next episode.